I want to tell you about a man named Georges Abdullah. Okay, so he's a Lebanese freedom fighter, a Lebanese resistance fighter, and he's Europe's longest political prisoner. Right, so I know I covered the Assange case, talk a lot about Assange, but on the topic of political prisoners, he is way up there. He's been in prison for 38 years. 38 years, right? So they arrested him in France, and they accused him of having murdered an American diplomat and an Israeli diplomat. And they said that his passport was falsified, that he had a fake Algerian passport. And they gave him a life sentence. Right? They gave him a life sentence. This is his picture, by the way, just so you can see. And in France, the idea is that he could have had parole. And after 15 years, I think it was, he was eligible for parole. And guess what happened? He's still in prison right now. 9 times he's applied, and every single time they rejected it. And I want you to explain. I want you to understand something, and I need to explain this for you because you are totally, you are not going to be surprised when I tell you this. Why do you guys think that he's still in prison? Who do you think has been lobbying to make sure that he stays in prison? Because keep in mind, they could technically extradite him to Lebanon. They could technically extradite him to Algeria. Algeria said that the passport is not fake. Algeria said, we gave him this passport. I wouldn't be surprised because Algeria is a strong, ardent, adamant supporter of the Palestinian resistance and the resistance in general, the Arab anti-Zionist, anti-imperialist resistance. And they could have extradited him there. They refuse. They want to keep him in, I think it's La Santé, the prison. But why do you think he's still in prison? You can't make this up. It's Hillary Clinton. So how do we know this? WikiLeaks. Isn't WikiLeaks beautiful? Isn't WikiLeaks marvelous? You can go back to these archives, which are like 10 years old, and still understand current political issues, right? So this is an email that Hillary Clinton wrote to the French, right? And she mentions Georges Abdullah, okay? And so she's saying that he was sentenced to life in prison in 1987 for his involvement in the 1982 murders of a U.S. military attaché and an Israeli diplomat in Paris, and the 1984 attempted murder of the U.S. consul general in Strasbourg. And then they say that down here, they say, although the French government has no legal authority to overturn the Court of Appeal January 10 decision, we hope French diplomats might find another basis to challenge the decision's legality. So they are in this letter, in this email, Hillary Clinton is basically lobbying the French to make sure that these freedom fighters stay in prison. How unsurprising, how underwhelming. Are you guys surprised? And the irony that it's because of WikiLeaks that we know this. Now you understand also why Assange is in prison, right? Now you understand why they want him in jail, because he helps expose things like this, right? He helps expose things like this. He really gives you an insight into what they're doing, these Americans, with the rest of the world, how they are able to pressure governments. In the WikiLeaks files, you can see how the U.S. pressured the Italians and the Germans not to prosecute CIA officers who had kidnapped and tortured their own citizens, Italian citizens, German citizens. So these European countries, these NATO countries, will even sell out their own citizens under U.S. pressure. It's so disgusting. And so here's just an article from 2016, right? You can see Hillary Clinton intervenes with the French foreign minister to block the release of Georges Abdullah. What a character she is, right? What a character. How unsurprising. And so this guy, they've pinned these murders on him, and every time he goes for parole, they constantly, he's always asked, do you repent, right? Do you regret what you've done so that we can release you back to society? He says no. He says, I am a freedom fighter, and whatever you're accusing me of, I will not abandon this cause, and I am steadfast. And 38 years, man. Like, that's incredible. Can you imagine spending 38 years of your life in a fucking jail? I'm not even 30. I'm not even 30. Like, I can't, that's not even, this guy's been in jail longer than I've been alive. Like, that's sick, you know? And I think the reason that they do this is because they don't want to release him and encourage others to take up arms and take up the cause of resistance. Because he is very, very popular and well liked. And I wanted to talk about him because, you know, even I didn't know that much. And I wanted to share what I learned with you. And I wanted to share a little bit about him because he's a guy that's obviously been kept in a jail and thrown away. You know, they've locked him up and thrown away the key and hope that everyone forgets about him. But the things that he's fighting for are still relevant today. They're still just as relevant and valid and legitimate. And it's really incredible. And people still protest about this, about his imprisonment. I want to show you a video from just 3 weeks ago. You have protesters in Lebanon demanding his release while the French ambassador was visiting. Take a look. They're saying Georges Abdullah Muqawim. I mean, he's a resistance fighter, you know. That's how much support he has. I wanted to tell you something also. You have people who worked in French intelligence who wrote in their memoirs that they know the charges are made up, right? Because again, where was he tried and jailed? In France, right? For allegedly killing an Israeli diplomat and an American diplomat. And the French intelligence in their memoirs have admitted that the whole thing is made up. So you can see the dirty, the foul play there is. This guy is not in prison because he committed a crime. He's in prison because it's a political witch hunt. It's a political attack against him. When look, man, when Hillary Clinton is writing a fucking email to keep you in jail, that shit is political. I don't care what you did or supposedly did. That is political. Case closed, man. That's Hillary the devil, right? Yeah, yo, man, if she's coming after you, you probably did something good, you know? I mean, with the exception of Trump, he did nothing good. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it just shows you when a foreign state is lobbying to keep you in jail past your sentence, like he should be allowed out on parole, right? 9 times they've denied him parole. Look this is from France 24, okay? And they say Yves Bonnet, the former director of France's central headquarters for surveillance of the territory and founder of the International Center for Research and Studies on Terrorism, contributed to the hunt that led to Abdallah's arrest in Lyon in 1984. Despite that, he declares himself in favor of the prisoner's release. Quote, "This injustice has lasted long enough," he recently told France 24, right? It's gone beyond the limits of what's reasonable, and at this point, nothing justifies his imprisonment. We should put him on a plane and send him back to Lebanon, where the authorities are willing to receive him. So when they wrote this, they're saying 7 times, but it's actually 9 times now, right? They just denied him again recently. I think it's important to talk about political prisoners, especially in the world that we live in today. You know, it's very easy to go along with the mainstream. It's very easy to support Israel. It's easy to support the US. It's nothing special about going along with NATO. It's nothing brave about supporting the mainstream media. These people, you know, they champion human rights. They champion equality. They fight for something that is, you know, that is noble. They fight for the dignity of people. And this is the punishment. Right? So for all the talk, you know, liberté, égalité, fraternité, you know, for all the talk of human rights and democracy, if you're actually a freedom fighter, if you're an actual revolutionary, an actual resistance fighter, this is how they treat you. You know, they put you in jail for 38 years like Georges Abdullah, or they lock you up like Assange. Like that's what the West does to the real freedom fighters, to the real dissenters, the real adversaries of this imperialist power center, and it's really disgusting. Even the guy who put him in jail is saying, like, this is this is not okay. Like, you punish this guy too much. I mean, that should count for something. And when we see Hillary Clinton interfering, that also should count for something. That should tell you that it's political. So I just wanted to talk about him because I feel really bad for him. Like, he's been in jail longer than I've been alive, and he's forgotten about. Like, there's not that much about him in English, at least, There are a few resources, but there's not that much. It's really sad, what they do to these people. Like, again, it's not a question, is this man perfect? Nothing to do with that. Because you often hear that when you, for example, talk about Assange, or you talk about a political prisoner, people think that you're like worshiping them or something. That's not the point, man. It's the principle. No one cares about their how they are, like, personally, or it's nothing to do with that. It's their work and their cause, the stuff that they fight for, and the fact that they're being punished for that. Here, just to read you some more from France 24, they say he's been eligible for release since 1999, yet continues to be denied parole, despite having parole requests approved several times by French judges. The Lebanese government has officially asked for his release, and he is asking to be deported to Lebanon. Yet, the French state has intervened at the highest levels alongside the US and Israeli regimes to deny Georges Abdullah's parole requests. Because they know that if he's allowed out and deported to Lebanon, he'll be free in Lebanon. I think that he would certainly be freed. And they don't want people to remember about him. They don't want people to know about him, to understand what he's been through and why he's been in jail. And they don't want others to follow in his footsteps. So again, this is what they do to the pro-Palestinians, to the actual freedom fighters.